I'm just realizing how absolutely essential it is for me. And I think for so many of us, as ADHDers, we often internalize a lot of messages from the outside world about all the things that are wrong with us, right? All the ways we need to be different and do different. And I think sometimes it's very easy to overlook how much that drives the way we feel about ourselves, how we take action in our lives. And it's really this space of sort of stepping back and giving ourselves what we didn't get as kids and becoming that loving voice and shifting the narrative of being that sturdy, solid parent, adult, in our life that we needed as kids so that we can start living, creating, and being from a place that's solid and loving and our true selves, really.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Successful with ADHD. Today I have Melissa Jackson, who's a neurodiversity advocate and reparenting coach for ADHD moms. I love that term, and I definitely want to know what that means a little bit more in a little bit. And she is a neurodivergent mom raising neurodivergent kids and comes to recognize that she herself was never equipped with the tools needed to thrive as an ADHD, twice exceptional, and dyslexic mother. So that's why Melissa is so passionate about equipping mothers with the tools we never received from a strength-based approach. She's the host of the Reframing Neurodiversity Podcast, which I was lucky enough to be on as well, and provides a community for ADHD moms raising neurodivergent kids on Substack. Melissa, what does reparenting mean?
Yeah. It is something that I have personally come full circle to in my life, and I'm just realizing how absolutely essential it is for me, and I think for so many of us, as ADHDers, we often internalize a lot of messages from the outside world about all the things that are wrong with us, right? All the ways we need to be different and do different. And I think sometimes it's very easy to overlook how much that drives the way we feel about ourselves, how we take action in our lives. And it's really this space of sort of stepping back and giving ourselves what we didn't get as kids and becoming that loving voice and shifting the narrative of being that sturdy, solid parent, adult, in our life that we needed as kids so that we can start living, creating, and being from a place that's solid and loving and our true selves, really. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I think it's something that whether you have ADHD or not, we all benefit from kind of taking that distance to give ourselves what maybe we didn't get.
How do we know if we need reparenting, or are you thinking that pretty much everyone needs some sort of awareness of when their parents are speaking their own language, right? And
Yeah.
you're not coming from your own core values and identity. So I know that's a
Yeah.
loaded question.
No, I get you. And I think it's any of us that struggle with low self-worth, lack of self-confidence, feeling sort of blocked to create the lives we desire or the relationships we desire, so much of that comes back to the internal narrative we've got going on in our minds, that the subconscious part of us is sort of running the show. These parts of us that are wounded and kind of stuck in these different moments and times in our lives where we experience some sort of trauma or disconnect from safety. And quite honestly, that's kind of all of us to varying degrees.
Mm-hmm.
When we can then kind of identify, oh, this is happening for me, and I I don't feel the way I wanna feel, that's kind of a sign that, yeah, you need to kinda step in and be that person that you needed in those times of your life, and you didn't receive it because it impacts us today, and that's
Oh, yeah.
yeah. a big
I'm
thing.
doing a lot of inner child work in
Oh,
my IFS and EMDR with my
yes.
therapist, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. I received different types of therapy in my life, but it was mostly talk. And then I got coached, and I was like, oh, coaching is amazing. And it is, right? But
Yeah.
then you also have these other parts of you, right,
Yep.
that show up that you didn't know they were going to show up. And they show up when you become a parent, and they show up when you become a spouse, and they show up when you change a job. And like, no one prepares you for these things, right? You have to reprogram yourself or
Yeah.
reparent yourself, right?
Yes, especially I feel like when we step into motherhood, it can really, shine a light on those parts of us that were really easy to kinda tuck away because it's uncomfortable. We don't these parts of us. I love that you speak to inner child work because I think that's so powerful. I do that too, and it's, these parts of us that are so easy to sort of bury and hide and put on these masks and really these coping mechanisms we've adopted as we've gotten older of maybe it's perfectionism, maybe it's people pleasing, maybe it's overachieving, like proving our worth, being worthy through what we can receive from others outwardly. And then we have kids and it's like, oh shit. That
My
thing.
whole world was just flipped upside down. The thing I thought I
Yeah.
prepared for is not actually what
Yes.
is real.
It shines a spotlight on all the stuff. All the
Yeah.
stuff we've kind of been able to like mask up, armor up, and like we're good, And then all of a sudden it kind of I feel like children are such a gift in that way because it forces us to look at these parts of us we've abandoned and that really need our love and attention. And I mean, that's really what reparenting is. And I feel like when we step into motherhood, it becomes even more necessary, which is tricky because so many of us are sort of breaking cycles. We're trying to create something we didn't receive. And so now you're responsible for raising children that you want to raise in a way that's maybe different, to give them something different than you received, but it wasn't modeled for you, how to be different. So it's sort of this like you're parenting yourself while parenting your child. And that, as an ADHD is extremely overwhelming. That's a lot coming at us.
It's a lot of
And
executive functioning.
a lot, right? And then the shame and the negative thought loops that can come out of that because it's impossible to do it perfect. Like, nobody is doing it perfectly, but yet so many of us have that perfectionism, and it's that, like, we should be doing this better. Like, I'm falling short here and here and here, and then that rumination and all the stuff that leads to more self-doubt and can impact our self-worth and all the things. It's a vicious cycle, and that if we don't have that perspective to step back from, to, like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," like, create some distance between sort of that stimulus and our response, even the response to our own thoughts, we can just get sucked in. And
Hmm.
so it's really that inner work that I'm so fascinated with. I originally started as an educator and helping families and advocate for their kids and helping teachers and here are the systems we put in place in the classroom and I started coming back to like, because I'm walking this real time in my own life and I'm like,
Sure.
I it starts with me. Like, I can have all the tips and tricks in the world, but if I'm not embodying, I don't know how to self-regulate and hold space and come at these tools from an energy that provides space to co-regulate and my child feels safe and like, none of the tips and tricks work. Like, it
Oh,
all
yeah.
starts with the foundational piece of being able to self-regulate and be self-aware and give ourselves that self-compassion so that we can then give it to
Give
our
to
kids and
others.
then apply the tips and tricks, right?
Yes. And in real time, obviously we could be as proactive, right, as we need. And we can remind ourselves and be aware, right? All of that is wonderful. But yes, we get into these patterns as adults, women with ADHD,
Mhm.
where we forget about that, right? Our working
Yeah.
memory, our long term
Yeah.
memory of that reparenting gets forgotten unless it's initiated and practiced because our brain's like a muscle. And I want to just
Yeah.
quickly share something. related to what you were just saying. It made me think last night, I was putting my daughter to bed. She's 2.5. And my mom bought her a book that a psychologist wrote. It said, um, my my anger volcano or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And I started reading the book to her. And I happened to get into it with my husband last night. So I was just kind of like totally dysregulated, right? We had verbal jujitsu, our communication wasn't communicating. And then I'm putting my daughter to bed and I'm reading this book about an anger volcano. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these simple practices of
Yeah.
regulating my anger and regulating the breathing and walking away, those simple things, like,
Mhm.
even though I know these things and you know these things, like, we're just not doing it enough
Yep.
because we're not prioritizing ourselves. So I literally walked
Mhm.
away from that book. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. Well, I'm not angry anymore. Like, thank you, Brielle, for allowing me to read that book to you so mommy feels better.
Absolutely. Such a perfect example of our kids literally give us what we need. Whether it feels like it all the time or not, it really is, yeah, a gift.
It is. It
And those
is.
simple
Yes.
things, they seem so simple. So I think it's easy. There's like the working memory piece because I relate to that too. Like, I'm like, I already know this. Why do I keep forgetting this? And then also the like, it seems so simple, so it can't be that important. There's other things that matter more. And it's so interesting when we really come back to prioritizing like what's at the root, the foundation of feeling better, of being able to handle our lives in a way that feel easeful. It's the simple stuff to regulate our nervous system, but it's so challenging to be with and do. Even though it's simple, I've noticed this in my life. There's been resistance to it, and it's because that's the work. Even though it seems simple, it's actually the
Simple
hard
is
stuff
the
that
work.
matters.
Yes.
Yes,
Simple
yeah,
is
yeah.
hard.
Simple is hard. Like
And
it's
hard is
actually
simpler for
yes,
ADHDers.
exactly.
It's more
Yes,
exciting too.
it's more
Simple is
exciting.
boring, but
Simple is
important.
boring. Exactly. Yep, and we tend to be good at the hard stuff and struggle at what other people might think are simple as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
really good at the hard stuff, and the simple stuff, we're like, I don't need to prioritize this because I already know it. And that doesn't matter. This hard stuff is what I need to focus on. But in
Mhm.
reality, you need someone like you to be like, wait a second, because
Yeah,
you're not focusing on these things and you're not reparenting yourself, these hard stuff are going to be even harder, and you're not going to be consistent with it, and you're going to be
ex
dysregulated, and you're going to be emotional, and you're going to be angry,
mhm.
and you're going to not be the person you want to show up as day after day.
Exactly. Deb Dana has a quote that says, like, "We do the work when we don't need it, so it's there for us when we do," like, referring to the nervous system work, and I think that's so beautiful because I tend to, like, when I'm good and I'm flowing, it's like, it's so easy to be like, "I don't need the work. I don't need to, you know, to apply my self-regulation practices or build up this resilience within my nervous system to hold more space because I'm good." But it's actually that's when we build up our reserves so that when we bump up against those things like argument with our spouse or the unexpected bad news at work or our kid having a meltdown, we've got that reserve and we've got the tools in our toolkit to like, "Oh, I know how to handle this. I know how to bring myself back. I know how to create the distance between this trigger and this response within me and to find a space within myself where I can show up in a way that I feel good about with whoever I'm in an interaction with, even if it's just with myself."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all have the choices in that moment. And typically, when we're emotionally dysregulated, our executive functions don't work and our
Right.
amygdala is just firing extra hard. We know that our amygdala fires with ADHD, but then
Yeah.
it's like literally the only thing that's firing when we're
Yeah.
triggered. So we're
Totally.
not thinking rationally, and it has to be easy for us to remember, like, oh, wait, I can pause, or I do have the tools. right? You had those tools that Dana was mentioning, you practice when you
Yeah.
don't need them.
Right.
How are you using them as a mom with ADHD and
Mhm.
having kids with ADHD?
Yeah. Well, one, I'm honest about, like, when I'm feeling something, I try to speak it out. Like, say I walk in the door and I'm flooded because everybody needs me. Like, I've gotten better about self-advocating and like, "Hey, I'm gonna go take a walk and I'll be back because I'm feeling overwhelmed and I wanna show up in a way that's different." I think, like, honoring our needs in that way and even speaking them out is super valuable, and then knowing what are the things that work for us because all of our nervous systems are different. So what works for me might not be the best thing for you. So that's why it's like playing with things when we don't need it so that when we do need it, we have our go-tos and it's an easy, hack in the moment. So for me, like getting outside, having fresh air is always super grounding. Sometimes you don't have that space though. You're in the car, your kid's screaming, you're about to sit down at a meeting, like you've got these demands. And so I like to give moms and all humans really tools they can use in the moment. Within my community, I help families find their emotional regulation, like toolkit, I call it. So their go-tos of practices that they can use in those moments. For me, some of my favorites are like havening. It's like where you basically just bring awareness to like the hand that's like touching your hand, and then you alternate your awareness to like the hand or the arm that is being touched, and, like, that
Mm.
like, little things like this just bring you into your body, like, if you are imagining what it feels like to be the hand that's touching your hand, and then you switch awareness to what it feels like to be touched.
You know what I like about that is we talk so much about scanning your body and visualizing, but that can be really hard with ADHD. So, in that, you're actually kinesthetically
Yeah.
doing something
Yeah.
that can help a person with ADHD feel it and
Yes.
really feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we tend to be overthinkers. And overthinking is actually an underfeeling problem. So what I've found is, okay, I've read all the books, I have all the stuff, I know all the tools with my brain. In fact, I can overanalyze them to death. But how do I embody? How do I feel the thing? And so that's what I try to help families with is like actually like the disconnect we can feel between the mind and the body with the overthinking. Like how do we get into the body in ways that are actually doable and practical? Like before you sit down to get on a call, how like, just becoming aware of your butt in the chair, your feet on the ground, resourcing in the room, noticing what's around you, like just bringing yourself back into your body so that you have the space to show up
To be
in a different
present,
way,
yeah.
to be present, which is hard. It's really
It's
hard.
really
It takes
hard.
practice.
So, one thing I know about coaching is that we all come to coaching on different levels. And I'm sure you have moms who come to you who just want proactive
Mhm.
tips because they're pregnant or, they're in a space where they're ready to show up for themselves and their kids, right?
Yeah.
Or you have the ones that are extremely overwhelmed and need you to help them like yesterday.
Yeah.
So, how do you work with the person who's already exhausted?
Yeah, I mean, it's each person and their experience and their situation is going to be unique, obviously, but I think it's always coming back to ourselves and where we are right now. Like the person that's exhausted, what they need most is to show up for themselves.
Mhm.
Because what actually makes the biggest impact in the lives of our kids and the lives of the people we love is investing in ourselves. I think we overcomplicate it. And
Mhm.
it's easy. The mind can take over and overcomplicate, but like it's really pretty simple. Like it's counterintuitive, but simple. Like if we can give to ourselves and find that space. And it's going to be different for all of us, right? About what fills us up, how we regulate our nervous system is going to be unique for each person. But when we start prioritizing that like my needs matter, my self-care matters. And actually that's what allows me to show up for my kids, for my partner, for my friends in the way that feels good to me and is what they need is when I invest in myself. And so that's
Yes.
been this full circle thing for me with like, it really starts with us as mothers. And I feel like women are so unsupported as mothers. I'm just gonna say it. Like, we need more support. Like,
Oh,
we need to be
yeah.
valued for what we do, this pivotal, critical role that we play in children's lives. And we're balancing so much and the emotional load and all the things. Investing in ourselves is where we start to change ourselves, our
Yes.
families, our children. Yeah. No
Yes.
matter where you're at.
Yeah. You could be the modern mom who's working full time and, emotionally extremely invested in your child
Mhm.
and doing all the things. And then you literally have no time for yourself, right? So then
Yeah.
it trickles over to your kids, or you could be a stay at home who is putting all of your energy also into your
Yeah.
child, and you're not prioritizing yourself and being around other adults who can support you. So it's hard. It's hard. And we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I'm sure you see big differences if you work with men also, with a level of shame that comes in from a mom compared to a dad. It's just different types of shame, right?
Yeah. It is. I primarily work with women because that's my wheelhouse. That's what I know. And that's who I feel like I'm walking it too. So it's like, let's do this together.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, it's for both, obviously.
How do you think the hormones play into all of this as well? I'm sure, the
Mhm.
tools that might work for a mom
Mhm.
that are working, and then all of a sudden it's that time of month, or then they're getting into perimenopause or even menopause, then you need to like pivot and adjust and reprogram again in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. No, it's always changing and evolving, and I think what stays consistent is it always comes back to our relationship with ourself. So, whether, yeah, you're a young mom or you're an older mother going through menopause and the hormones are changing, it's like, how do we relate to those changes within our body? How do we relate to these things that are coming up for us? And that's when we have the tools to reparent, to rewire the thoughts, to create space in our nervous system to be with what's going to come up because life is always going to throw curveballs. We're not meant to stay regulated all the time. It's like I think that's a misconception too that another pressure that we can put on ourselves like I'm doing something wrong if I'm feeling uncomfortable, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling dysregulated and it's actually like the nervous system is intended to go in and out of these different states. We're intended to have challenges in our life that are going to feel uncomfortable. We're not doing anything wrong. So when we can
No,
relate to what's happening to us differently, we can feel differently though about what we're experiencing no matter what it is. Does that make sense?
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then one of the biggest tips that I have utilized today is, like you said, looking inward and just asking yourself, what do I need? And
Yes.
you always know.
You do.
But
Your body
like you
knows.
said, our brains start scanning and overcomplicating it and thinking about all these creative ways of redoing the spreadsheet, redoing the ideas, creating a new app, but like we always typically have the answer within us to at least regulate ourselves in the moment. What do we need?
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
listening to that. I was
exactly.
talking
You got
to
it.
I was talking to a mom who lives in Canada, very busy, very successful person, and she was totally overwhelmed, not sleeping. She was the primary caretaker in the house, even though she was the breadwinner.
Mhm.
And I looked at her and I said, do you ever have a moment for yourself?
Mhm.
And she goes, well, sometimes when I'm in the shower, I have a couple of seconds until my kids come in. I said, so you don't have a space for yourself? She goes,
Yeah.
no, I never even thought about that. And fast
Or
forward, she was lucky enough and she was fortunate enough to end up getting an office space where she could just, not even do work, but just regulate
yeah.
herself. But we don't even think of that as a necessity as a
Yeah.
parent.
No. No, I feel like we've been kind of conditioned that being a good mom is being, like, selfless, like, putting our needs last. And I think it's this rewiring of that conditioning of actually the flip is true, like, caring for ourselves is what's being a good mom. One, it's allowing us to show up in a way that our kids need, that our families need, and it's modeling for our children that they have permission to show up for themselves, because what are we showing them if we're just constantly the martyr who does everything for everyone and we have, no needs and our needs don't matter? Now we're raising little humans that grow up to think that that's their burden, So, but
That
when
they
we
have to
can
people please
yes, that
and
everyone
care what
matters
other
before
people think.
themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's really this kind of this flip of conditioning, I feel like, for women.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I saw just a quick clip on Instagram from Dr. Amen, and I thought it was beautiful what he said that our children's our emotions are played by our children like a violin.
Mm. Mhm. We're so in tune, with our kids' feelings, and they're so in tune with ours. Yeah, I know that, like, when my kids are upset, like, I can immediately feel dysregulated by their big feelings, and yeah, I think that's why it just all comes back to, like, how do we create that secure attachment with ourselves so we can then be attuned and have this secure attachment with our children? Does that make sense? Like,
Mhm.
which is hard because we probably don't have a secure attachment with our primary caregivers. So we're
Mhm.
trying to recreate something that we didn't get and then relate to our children's feelings in this way that wasn't modeled for us. Like, that we're not jumping into, like, okay, so, like, when I was a kid, if I had big feelings, it was a problem, right? So I learned that, like, you shove those feelings
You
down,
repress them.
repress them, put on the good girl
A
conditioning, put
happy
on the mask,
face.
happy face. If I did have a problem, it was like, "We need to fix your problem because this is wrong." There was never space given to that feelings were okay, those feelings were valid, the feelings were needed, the feelings were our indicators of our needs, and, like, getting them out is how we release and all of that, and so when we start learning this for ourselves and giving this to ourselves, we can then relate to our children's feelings in a different way as well, rather than this is a problem, as more of like an invitation to be with and show our kids that having these big feelings, having this discomfort, having this reaction is valid, and you're not scared of it, and we can be with it and allow it, and, like, I think that's how we shift the cycle for these next generation of people is, like, we're able to be with the feelings without needing to fix, solve, shame, all the things that happen to us, but it's
Mhm.
like that having to, like, separate ourselves from, "Whoa, I'm triggered by this response because this little part of me wasn't allowed to have that response. So now I've got to step in and be the adult for me and the adult for this child in front of me, which isn't easy."
And then sometimes we're in relationships where we feel like we have to be the adult to our partner too. And that is a whole other dynamic where you shouldn't ever have to feel that way, right? Or put yourself in that situation.
Yeah. And we often attract partners who have similar trauma to us. So it's always
Trauma bonds.
the trauma bond. So it's always this opportunity though to heal, right? It's always this opportunity, like, what is this person showing me? What is this relationship a mirror to an unmet need within myself? How do I relate to that unmet need in a different way and respond to it in a different way? But if we're not
Hmm.
regulated, if we don't have the tools to have the space for that experience, we're just reacting
Yep.
and we just kind of stay in the cycles.
Yeah. Oh, what else would you think is important to share for parents of children with ADHD, specifically moms?
Yeah.
navigating all of this?
Prioritize yourself. I can tell you when I was, a young mom, my kids are older now, they're almost 13 and 16. And I was a teacher before they were born, and when they were born, I stopped working. Like, I did all the things you're supposed to do, you know what I mean, with my mind. I'm like, "Okay, I'm a full-time mom. I'm reading all the books." Like, I put my first on a sleep schedule, which is a whole nother a whole 'nother thing if you follow Gabor Mate's work on attunement. But I was doing all the things, like, here are the things I need to do. But I can look back, and I so wasn't present in my body. I was stressed. I was overwhelmed. I was overthinking. And yes, I was sitting there reading the book. Yes, I was volunteering and being the mom who did the things. But was I attuned to my kids? Was I present? Did they feel that connection from me? I doubt it. Like, and that's all hard, like, it's painful, but, I don't think so, because I wasn't in the space at that point in my life to understand how to create a secure attachment with myself, how to show up for myself, how to be with myself. So I was always somewhere else, even though my body was there. And so I think as moms, the greatest gift we can give our children is to learn how to be with ourselves, to be present so that when we're with them, even if you're working and you're only with them small portions of the day, like, when you're with them, you are with them. They
Mm-hmm.
feel that connection.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I would read a book and, like, and if they asked me questions about the book, I might be like, "I don't even know what I just read," because my head was somewhere else. It's like, it's about truly being with them, and that comes with doing the work on ourselves. So I think it just always, always comes back to us.
Totally. Well, if you want to hear more about Gabor Mate's attunement, he was on Successful with ADHD. So scroll back to
Mm,
2023 and we could
okay.
listen to his attunement stuff. But yeah, he does not recommend sleep schedules, um, right or wrong. Right. And another thing that just stuck with me from what you were saying is Jim Kwik was on our podcast several weeks ago, and he was talking about waking up in the morning before looking at your phone. It doesn't have to be this whole big thing. It could be like 10 seconds, right? And just thinking about what you want to be intentional about professionally and personally. And I
Mm.
can't even tell you, I started doing that, did it yesterday about my business and my personal, and like it just stuck with me. It worked intrinsically and extrinsically. And I was able to correlate what I created in the morning for the evening. And my day was just so much more fulfilling. Just
Yeah,
from that like one simple, okay, I'm gonna focus on this and I'm gonna focus on this, or this is what I'm looking forward to, and this is what I'm gonna get out of the day. Boom, done.
I love that. I love that you share that because that's how simple it gets to be. Again, coming back to the simplicity, it's like we don't have to have 20 minutes to meditate. It's like those little moments, those little choices. That's an act of self care. That choice you made to be like, I'm going to give myself some space before I look at my phone, to be with myself, to set an intention for how I want to feel, how I want this day to unfold. Like, that is it. Like, that's the work. It's like finding those little ways to give that to ourselves in whatever ways works for your lifestyle.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know that this message is going to go wide, especially with all the women listening here on Successful with ADHD. Melissa, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or get help from you or even receive some free tips?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on Instagram, neurodiversity_advocate. You can find me there. I'm also on Substack, which is neurodiversity.substack.com. That's where my community is. I also have, a free membership over there. And I have a new freebie I'm actually releasing this week, a self-regulation toolkit. So that I will actually drop for you as well that people can grab.
Thank you so much. Melissa,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here and sharing the simple but hard tips that we need to come back to as moms, as people with ADHD. Hopefully, the people listening to this 30-minute episode can pause now
Mm.
or pause previously and just take that moment to ask yourself, what do you need?
I love it. Thank you for having me, Brooke.
Thank you for being here, Melissa. Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helps you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.